Greetings. You're listening to Guiding Stars Evolutionary Astrology Radio. Hey, Rose.
Hi, Kristen.
I surprised you with that one, didn't I? Rose and I are here today to talk about the transits for the coming month of June and end of May. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Yeah, and this is our second video podcast, and we're working the bugs out, so we hope that the recording is better this time.
Oh, yeah. So, and it's 11:11, so it's a good time to start this recording. I'm big on numbers with Jupiter and Gemini right now at the end of the month. I do have Jupiter and Gemini. You do too.
Yes.
So the universe speaks to us through numbers and astrology, of course, there's a lot of numbers involved, but it's an intuitive science. It's a natural science based on observation and correlation. And Jupiter and Gemini is interesting right now at the tail end because we've got Jupiter, the intuition, with Gemini being the left brain, to have those two together. As we close Jupiter and Gemini, how would you wrap up this archetype in terms of how it was really meant to function for us, and if we've learned anything from this transit?
Well, Jupiter is the planet of increase and expansion, of course, right? So as it touches Gemini, this is really an increase of information that comes in, right? And it is multi-platformed and multi-dimensional, and it is, as I've said in other talks here, everything all at once, right? So it has been necessary. Jupiter is a 1 year transit through a sign. It's just finishing up in Gemini. It'll move into Cancer on the 9th of June, 8th of June, for its 1 year tour. But it has been important over this past year for us to gather information. And the information we gather is experiential, right?
Mhm.
And it's present time. Gemini deals with, again, it's an air sign, but it deals with the present moment, and it
Yeah,
deals with recent. And it also deals with Mercury is, sorry, Gemini is the archetype of short distance rather than long
right.
distance, right? So it has to do with your immediate response to the information that's coming in through the experiential track, through the communication track, through what you are stumbling upon in any given
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah. Jupiter can also connect to where you get lucky.
Yep.
And I am a Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, and I have Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. And there's a joke amongst me and my friends, my family. I am the one who always gets the parking place, the front parking place wherever I go. It's a joke, but it's true. It just happens. So when you talk about short distances, or I don't know, Jupiter just is this magnetic energy. It just allows you to manifest something simply by thinking about it. And you can't just manifest it without right intention, right? You have to have a clear intention. I'm in such a hurry. I need that parking space right at the beginning. So I'm giving this silly example only to remind everybody that what we think about is important. What we energize is so important. And we want to focus on what we have, not what we don't have. And so I'm looking forward to this transition, even though I do have natal Jupiter and Gemini. I'm looking forward to the shift into water, but we'll talk more about that later in the show. Um, I was just really feeling Jupiter at the tail end of Gemini right now for so many reasons, and thinking about as it's wrapping up for all of us. Think about how has it changed you? How has the new information changed you? How has your communication skills helped you? Have they helped you? How do you think about life now after this transit's, really coming to a close? And maybe you can really work with these final days of Jupiter and Gemini to shift the way you think about something so you can manifest more of the things that you want. And I think that's really important. The mind is a powerful thing, sometimes more powerful than we would like it to be, right? So,
Yeah, I think that the Jupiter expansion archetype has intentionally put the attention on the moment, right?
yeah.
That's where all the action has been. It's been very important for us to increase the focus on the short range and the immediate, because that's where the intention has been and where the action has been and where you have meant to be. Each moment leads to the next moment. It's like a domino effect. And
Yeah.
Jupiter cycles, by the way, are a 12-year cycle. And if you think back, a 12-year cycle is ending and a new 12-year cycle is beginning. And we can break that down into a 6-year transit as well, too. And if you think back, you might find that a momentum was getting started about 12 years ago that a cycle has completed. We have so many cycles within cycles. That's just one of the batch of things that we have.
Mhm. Great. All right, well, a very major shift this weekend. We're going to kick off this show with, really, that was just a warm up, but we're going to kick off this show with a very big cycle. Saturn is completing, well, temporarily completing a 28, 29-year chapter through the zodiac at the tail end of Pisces, entering Aries on Saturday night in the West. So, Saturday night, Saturn will exit Pisces and enter Aries. Wow. Go back to that picture for a second. I do need to share this. In my
Yeah.
newsletter, I was mentioning that I did a triathlon one time in my life, a one and only time for a reason. There's something about being in the ocean. There's something about being around a lot of bodies in the ocean when my feet, my Pisces feet, are not firmly planted. People flailing their arms and kicking in your face. And that can be like a Saturn and Pisces experience. We're out in the ocean, just not sure where we are going sometimes. Maybe we aren't feeling totally grounded with how things are playing out, and we don't can't see the future clearly sometimes when we're swimming underwater. And this is an example of what it felt like for me to finally finish that ocean race and have my feet hit the sand, hit the land. The feet, there's going to be heat beneath your feet with Saturn coming into Aries, and the sun is in her face in this picture. I mean, I really remember this feeling. It's visceral when I think about it now. So, I actually also have Saturn in Pisces. It's interesting, all of these transits right now, but I am looking forward to Saturn in Aries.
I
It
think
will,
that that's
yeah,
that's so it's such a great statement. Heat beneath your feet
yeah,
perfectly
right.
describes Pisces rules the feet,
Yes, it
And
does.
this image, although you have it here for Pisces, really this is Saturn and Aries, isn't it? Really,
Yeah, it's both.
I
It's the
had
transition.
I had a sense, and this was when Neptune was moving out of Pisces and into Aries, which it did at the end of March. And Neptune's a 14-year transit, so it has just entered into Aries before Saturn moves into Aries. And I had this sense during that time when the Neptune transit was just finishing in Pisces of being, at the bottom of the ocean, looking up at the surface and seeing these sparkle pieces. And it was like, these are these inspirations that are popping through popping through the water of consciousness, right?
Mm,
Pisces is an archetype that we think of as nebulous, and it can deal with fog or not being able to see clearly and all the uncertainty.
mm.
And as it was finishing up in Pisces and getting to Aries, the sparks were already lighting. And this is what this image reminds me of, like how the ocean glistens when that splash happens.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
All over her body too. I think too of like carbonation with the carbonation in a drink, in a water drink, and all these bubbles coming up to the top of the sea, and all these thoughts that you have, these dreams that you have as they come up to the top of the sea. So you can now go after them with Saturn and Aries, right? They're rising to the surface, hopefully to give you more clarity.
Absolutely. And the thing is that with Pisces, you may not be able to see clearly, what potential is real, what is
Mm,
real, what is reality, and so forth. And moving out of Pisces and into Aries, it's such a dramatic threshold crossing, right? It's
mhm,
so dramatic. Out of nothing comes something, out of something comes everything, right?
mm.
And
Love
this is
that.
this moment when dynamic change instantaneously occurs. Instantaneous is an Aries archetype. Spontaneity is an Aries archetype,
Right.
and so on, right? Shall I
Yeah,
move some
so go
slides here?
ahead.
Yeah.
Saturn in Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is our desire nature. The desires of the soul are expressing itself through that Mars function out in the world by the choices that you make. The desires that you have generate choices, and those choices require action. And a lot of those big choices require courage, and that is all Aries energy. Saturn and Aries, it's really, they're very antithetical in a way. They're both cardinal archetypes with Saturn ruling Capricorn and Aries being ruled by Mars. So we've got both cardinal energies at play here, but it is an opportunity to then harness that fire, that passion, bring it into form, give it some structure. But it's going to be a temporary time with Saturn and Aries. Only 3 months. We only get 3 months of this fire, right? Before it backs into Pisces on September 1st again, and then re-enters Aries next, February 14th, 2026. And so this is really like a test drive, I would say.
Yeah, and Saturn's only going to go to 1 degree and then turn retrograde, so it's just dipping in a little bit. And Saturn and the archetype of Aries, they are antithetical because Saturn is all about control, right? And Aries is all about freedom. And so, the dynamic between the two, they chafe. Now, Saturn
Mm.
in Aries is considered in its fall. The fact that Saturn does not operate naturally in the sign of Aries, or that Aries doesn't operate naturally in the sign of Saturn. But what I think about this, and every time you hear Saturn, you think like, oh my God, and it comes. Any thoughts about Saturn come with a sense of dread, right? And so forth. Absolutely, Saturn can be restrictive. It can be sobering. It's a harsh reality. Saturn deals with reality. It deals with the limits and the limitations. It puts you under pressure. It makes you confront the hard stuff. And Saturn is an archetype that is about consequences as well too. What's been built up and how you're dealing with all of that. And Aries is all about instinct and impulse, and it can be impetuous. It's freedom. It's needing courage. Saturn is an archetype of fear. We button down the hatches because we're in fear of things, and we limit and we restrict and so forth. But what I think about these two, how they combine and how they combine beautifully, is that Saturn, I always call Saturn the hard taskmaster. Saturn has priorities. It is going to focus in on the important priorities that are relevant to the present moment, right? So what Saturn's a builder archetype, and right now it wants to move some rocks out of the way. It wants to, it's an architect archetype as well too. It's about building. It's about climbing that mountain and getting to the summit. Saturn's ambitious. Aries has ambition in it as well too. Aries looks to attain that which it desires, right? But what I love about the two of these is that they both have objectives, and both planet and sign are ambitious to accomplish something. And I think what this Aries, Saturn and Aries is about is being very targeted.
Mm.
Where the impetuousness of Aries is just going to go for the immediate moment, going to go for the first instinct, the first impulse. I want that, and I'm going for it, right? Saturn is going to qualify that. So the combination of the two of those, Saturn is not about wastage. It's going to be focused in on the target. And
Mm.
this is what I think about Saturn and Aries. It's focused on the target. What is the essential? Where should you be directing your energy? And we're just coming out of Saturn in Pisces, and I've said this many times since the beginning of the year of 2025. every client that I've had has come to me saying, I don't know where I'm going. I can't figure it out. I'm not sure what the potential is. It's all that nebulousness of all the Pisces energy that we've had. So to come out of the fog and into direct, making a straight shoot here right onto the bullseye. That's what I think about Saturn and Aries. Very well targeted. We don't have any luxury of wastage here with this, nor do we want. Aries doesn't want to waste time. Saturn doesn't want to waste time. So their combination together, I think, is really efficient in terms of getting you focused in on the most important thing for you to do. That's
Yeah.
Aries.
I love this. I have a great analogy. So 28, 29 year chapter or cycle reminds me of running a marathon. So it's a 28.2 mile race. And if I have that correct, it's been a long time. I did run one once in my 20s, and it was a long way. But the thing about a marathon, whether it's your life and you're living through that chapter, that marathon chapter, I just came through a second Saturn return. Wow, when I looked at back at that last Saturn chapter, right? The first one's big when you're pushing 30, but when you're pushing 60, it's like, whoa, what has been accomplished in that chapter? So many different benchmarks or turning points or milestones, whether it's having children or getting into this work, whatever it might have been. But over time, and you're able to look back in your history and observe what has happened in that chapter. And so, on the one hand, it's important to look back to see what have you manifested in that Saturn chapter for yourselves. We're all kind of going through a Saturn return together with Saturn entering Aries. So, when you think about running a marathon, you can't just show up for the race without training, right? I mean, you have to spend a lot of time and dedication. You're setting a goal, that's Saturn. Aries wants to run that race. And Saturn says you're going to have to spend some time building up to that pace. You've got to know that you can run at least 21 miles. That's the minimum, in my opinion, to know that you can finish that marathon. I mean, you can walk the rest of the way, but if you want to run the whole thing, you've really got to put your time in. So when I see this, and just this can be an analogy for anything, whether you're testing a new business, writing a book and it needs edits, or building a business in some way, you're testing different stages of that dream, of that goal. And so with Saturn retrograding back into Pisces, there's going to be a period of reflection and maybe opening things up a bit more. You're still going to need to be training for something that is going to be launching itself in February. But one other little piece, little magic piece, is that Saturn comes up and joins Neptune. Neptune and Aries at 1 degrees. And Neptune and Saturn are like the odd couple. Like they could not be more odd together, right? They're so different in nature. Saturn's so ambitious, and Neptune is all about ideals and idealism. And so it's going to be important. I think it's important to be able to have your ideals, but Saturn is going to say, okay, well, this is what's realistic in this time period. And so I just wanted to mention that because that can keep the fog in place. And actually, it can kind of keep the fear in place. Am I going to be able to pull off this race, this marathon? I think it does still have some fog until next February.
Yeah, and Saturn and Neptune will meet for the first time. They're going to be very, very close for the rest of this year, both in the sign of Aries and then both backing into Pisces and coming back again. It is on February 20th of 2026 that Saturn and Neptune will conjunct for the first time. That's a 36-year cycle. And what that represents is the ending of an era and the beginning of another era of your life. Saturn and Neptune represent, collective, it's a social reset. It's a whole collective at a new chapter here. But you might think about yourself in terms of that an entire chapter, 36 years of your life. 36 years at about the age of 36, it's the second half of the late 30s when you go through your what we call the midlife crises transits. It's that whole cluster of transits. And it's interesting that the Saturn Neptune cycle is 36 years as well too. So I think that that's really quite amazing. Now Saturn is behind Neptune until February of next year, which is two things that behind. It's a balsamic relationship is about completion. There are things that need to be finished off. Saturn is qualifying what the potentials are in terms of making real what it is that is strong enough to be carried the distance, carried
Mm,
forward, right?
mm,
And whatever it is that maybe too weak to survive, that needs to, it's the dissolving pattern of Neptune to further empty out any residues that are left behind. And of course, that's going to be finishing off with whatever karmic cycles you may be under or working under as well too for yourself in terms of your illusions on how you're projecting your realities and seeing what's real and finishing up with things over the course of this year. So I have looked at, as you've just said, the whole year of 2025 as a test drive pattern.
mhm,
It is not only Saturn and Neptune dipping into new signs, but also Uranus is dipping into new signs, and so on, right? So we
mhm,
have quite a long running start to get to the starting point.
mhm.
And I love what you said about training in order to get there.
Yeah, so it's 9 months. That's not very much time in the scheme of things. And one thing that I love about the pairing of Neptune and Saturn and what might help you all just be with the energy and the time and surrender to the time that something might take is that once Saturn does move in front of Neptune on the 21st of February, when it actually moves in front of Neptune, depending on where you're living, 20th, 21st of February next year, it is a little bit like being at the theater and waiting for the show to begin. You have no clue what's happening behind that curtain, right? You're so excited about really the launch of something or the race, and you have no idea how you're going to feel. You've never run a marathon or you've never, whatever it is that you're after. And so when those curtains part, and you all of a sudden see this new thing that you've been working on for so long. You see the show, it's your show, and you're the director sitting there in the seat watching it happen and really directing the fire. You are mastering the fire. You're mastering your fire with Saturn and Aries. You're taking responsibility for what it is that you're doing and why you are here. You're taking charge of your joy. You're taking charge of your passion. You're not sitting, on the bench with it. And so Aries is going to get you out of your seat and, into something, onto something, passionate about something, on fire for it. And that's why we like it.
And that's it's such a great analogy of sitting in the theater watching, waiting for the show to begin. When you're sitting in the theater, you are distracted, right? There's so many different things
Yeah.
going on. And then the movie comes on and you are totally engaged, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I think about Saturn and Aries. You're waiting for that launch point. But once the launch point comes, you will be totally engaged. You'll be totally immersed because that's Aries. Aries is very singular minded, right? It is not distracted, but it is very, very focused.
Hmm.
And I want to show something. It's we're talking about it now, but maybe I'll say this and I'll show it to you in the chart that we're going to show a little bit later. But um, there's a horary rule that's called translation of light. And it's when one body moves and it picks up the energy of one and disposits it on the other through an aspect. And this is going to be Jupiter forming a square to Saturn and then a square to Neptune. And this is what I think about this long running start will be followed by kind of a quick moving forward, is what I think, in terms of that uncertainty and getting started and the test pilot and the backtracking on finishing patterns and letting go of more, clearing out whatever else needs to take place in the fall, relinquishing, all of that going, and then moving into next year. I think we're going to be moving on quite a fast track. So it's a slow running start to jettison someplace.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I think if you that's the beauty of astrology. If you know something needs to take time to be at its best, then you're going to surrender to that time, right? Because, you know, some things aren't up to us either. I mean, the astrology tells the truth all the time. We can just watch it and observe it. No matter how much we want something to happen fast, we can't force it under this transit, right? So that's what we need to remember and enjoy the process.
Yeah, and Aries is one of its follies is being premature,
Yeah,
acting
for
too
sure.
fast, acting too rash, right? So
For
with
sure.
Saturn and Aries, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It isn't within the scope of Saturn and Aries to go that fast. Now, if there's frustration around that, that's quite possible. Saturn and Aries can frustrate when you feel that you want to go faster, and Saturn is inhibiting that speed. But there's always a reason for it. Saturn always has a reason. Is what we say, make friends with Saturn, and Saturn rewards you,
Mhm.
right?
Definitely.
Shall we move to the next screen? What have we
Mhm.
got on there? Ah,
So much of this transit with Saturn and Aries, we were talking about the next 9 months. It really is going to impact you all the next month. And, already right out of the gates here too, we have New Moon in Gemini coming up on Monday, Memorial Day in the US at night, May 26th, 8:02 p.m. There are many, many transits happening. And Rose, wow. It's been a while since I remember Pluto trining a new moon. So we've got the sun and the moon in Gemini with Mercury, which is the ruler for Gemini. That's a triple signature right there. That has a lot of energy all on its own. A new beginning, new ideas, new thoughts, new conversations, an energy of upliftment, excitement, and also an energy where you're not quite sure which direction to put your energy, because with Gemini it wants options and there's a diversity of things going on. There's so many choices. But with the trine to Pluto, wow. I mean, look at that. It's brilliant. It's giving you that it really is like being in the middle of a wave and feeling the ocean beneath you, supporting the direction that you're going. You just have to acknowledge that the sea is in control of this thing, right? Your soul is in charge of this thing in this context. Your soul is directing the show. Your soul knows where it's going. And so it's important to recognize the energies that are available to you during a new moon, for example, knowing how to direct your energy, your thoughts, what intentions to make. So this is my favorite part of the new moon. What about you?
well, the other thing about Mercury is in Gemini, so it's in its natural sign. But Mercury being the ruler of the new moon, and in trying to Pluto, Mercury is the ruling planet of the South Node. So Mercury activity, wherever it goes, sometimes we don't give Mercury too much importance because it's such a fast-moving planet. But Mercury, planet of the mind, planet of communication, is vastly important. Why don't we give it more credence, more respect? So this is a very potent new moon because it is helping you to connect the dots in some kind of way, in some kind of new way, relevant to the South Node in Virgo. That is uncovering something. And the uncovering of that South Node allows for two things: a fresh perspective. That's Mercury and Pluto right there, right? A fresh perspective that allows you to eliminate something that is, a weakness in the chain. It's the weak argument that you have, or the weak rationale that you have behind perpetuating more of the same. So I think that this Mercury Pluto trine here allows for the entertainment of new ideas, for new thoughts to come in, for a new communication track to come in. Let's have a new conversation about this, right? So
Yeah.
there's great opportunity here to move past the things that need to be eliminated, the things that need to, the way that we've been analyzing what is essential. That method of analysis may no longer serve.
Yeah, a big piece of this I really feel is eliminating doubt, self-doubt, any undermining thoughts that you've had that have gotten in the way of your soul's purpose.
I
What
can't because,
yeah, so you replace I can't with I can. I am. And that will remove a hurdle
or a little
immediately.
bit of why not as well
Why
too.
not me? Yeah,
What have you
why
got
not
to
me?
lose?
Yeah, I like
Right?
that.
Yeah.
I
I
like
think
why
that
not me.
I think that that's a really potent new moon, and
Mhm.
the Sun and Mercury will be conjunct just on the 24th of May. So we're just finishing off the month with mobilization,
Yeah.
right? Mobilization.
I wanted to add one more thing. We've got Jupiter in Gemini squaring the nodal axis right now. It's going to be a couple steps beyond that square at the new moon, but as we're recording, it is squaring the nodes. And Jupiter is can be about compensation, right? So you're compensating, really your nature, your truth, your right work, whatever it might be, in a way that's keeping you from why you're here and what you want to be doing. What is that activity or the work focus that is an example of compensating for who you really are. And so even if you don't have a natal skip step in your chart, whenever there are transits forming a skip step in this case, which essentially means a planet squaring the nodal axis, your past and your future, there's a pattern, there's a truth you've been avoiding or denying that you need to address. So you can embrace the North Node, which is the resolution node here, which is in Pisces, which is heal the past. And the Pisces in the water, it's like movement. When I think of Pisces, I think of water. I feel like it's fluid, it's movement, it's oneness, it's wholeness, it's healing. And so, if there's been any conversation you haven't had, or something that you've been making excuses for why you cannot do something with a South Node in Virgo, this Jupiter squaring the node says, this is it. This is where you've been compensating. Deal with this, and you can experience the benefits of this transit.
This is, Jupiter squaring the nodes is a threshold crossing, and Jupiter to the North Node, in terms of the movement forward of that is moving past illusions,
Yeah.
and moving past the lies that you tell yourself, right? And Jupiter to that Virgo South Node is about facing the reality,
Yeah,
you know stripping it down is to seeing what's really there, seeing what you really have to work with,
exactly.
instead of the fantasy that you may be holding on to that is no longer workable for you.
Precisely. All right.
Ready? Shall we move on there? Oh, Jupiter in Cancer. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's so, doesn't that feel good? Come on, let's just get into
Yeah.
the water already. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a talk at Norwalk this weekend on Jupiter in Cancer. And, it's a year-long transit, as you mentioned, Rose. So we're all going to be experiencing more water, less mind, more feeling. That is the leaning. Well, it's going to force you to leave your mind at bay. It's going to force you to feel things first. So you don't want to fight it. It really is about, it is the first water sign of the zodiac. Number four house, the first element that is water. And we have to get into the water to evolve. That is the course of action. River to the sea. We surrender to the river because the river will always follow the path of least resistance. As we make our way back home to the sea, that is Cancer. As we make our way back home to the oneness, the wholeness, that experience. And for anybody who's skinny dipped or, whatever it might be, there's nothing like being in the water naked. And so I'm inviting you all to do that emotionally, right? So you can experience your own freedom, your own movement. And depending on where Jupiter is transiting in your chart, is going to point to where there needs to be more vulnerability, openness, emotional work potentially. And yeah, it's a tender tide and it's necessary in order to experience. the kind of evolution and growth that we all wish for.
I love that tender tide, because Jupiter, again, planet of increase in the sign of Cancer, is increasing your emotional responsiveness, your receptivity. This is a really empathic archetype. It's all about, feeling the emotional body in a way that, Jupiter in Cancer is all about security, and it's all about, feeling your way to what is going to nurture and nourish you the most. And with Jupiter in Cancer, it brings in the wisdom piece of you really feeling what it is that is going to serve you in that way. How are you going to find sustenance emotionally? Again, it is about self-care, and it's about taking care of home and hearth, family, and the concentration on the things that are most important. We have Pluto and Aquarius going on right now. We've got a lot of Aquarius stuff going on, a lot of transits. And I think that we've been getting very detached from our emotional body, um, based on the fact that we're always on social media, we're on our phones, we're not really relating to one another. This Jupiter in Cancer increases that vibrational, the sensitivity. You're picking up the energies here. You can't help but feel more when Jupiter enters Cancer, and hopefully it gives you the courage to allow yourself to feel it all, to feel what it is that vulnerable spot. Because in that vulnerable spot, that's where you're going to find, what will sustain you, what will provide you with the comfort that you seek.
Yeah, I mean, for any of us, it does require really a practice of meditation, in my opinion, every day to go and sit and to reach for that peace, uh, to to enter a space of meditation with a desire to be held by something more eternal. It's essential in order to really allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to be in that space, to feel loved for who we are, to ask to be shown what it looks like to express our natural selves in the world, even in a vulnerable way. And so at times it will take those kind of spaces to cultivate a greater feeling of being held, so we're not so fearful of being vulnerable, understanding that that's where our power lives, is in our vulnerability. It's showing the world who we actually are. Jupiter naturally rules the second chakra with Neptune. It's very revealing when we are able to just relax and not resist or not detach. And when the world sees our nature, whatever it is, whether you've got 10 piercings and green hair or however you're walking in the world, it's the most attractive thing that you can offer the world. Your truth, your nature, your authentic self. Jupiter in Cancer softens all the edges. More of your soul comes through your eyes with Jupiter in Cancer. Uh, it is a most attractive thing when somebody allows themselves to be vulnerable, not weak. It's strength. Like in the when Harry Met Sally movie, right? And Meg Ryan's in the restaurant. She's at the table and she's pretending to have this wild big orgasm. And these women are at another table. Maybe she is having one. And they're saying, all have what she's having. So what she's doing is she's making herself wildly vulnerable in this place. And by doing so, other women are saying, yes, I want that too. I want to feel that freedom, to be that open and unapologetic in the process. So, wow, this is a tender tide and it's inviting you into the water with nothing, no strappings, no holding, no resistance, no fear, just getting in without anything on. That's
Yeah,
what it
Cancer,
requires.
Cancer, it's the archetype of touch, right?
Yeah.
Jupiter in Cancer, you will be touched one way or another, you
Oh
know?
yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
It's true.
awesome. Okay. So we have a full moon in Sagittarius on June 11, 20 degrees, Gemini and Sag.
Okay, so I'm gonna need like this one when I was creating this chart, I was like, uh-oh. Like I was feeling a little bit I'm the eternal optimist, but I'm looking at this full moon thinking, all right, Rose is gonna have to talk about this one. Because I felt, Mars and Uranus will be squaring each other leading up to this full moon. So the whole week before the full moon, and as we all know, when the moon is waxing, we tend to feel more than ever. And so Mars is squaring Uranus. They're tripwires, emotional tripwires that we experience, and anything that we've been holding on to, trapdoors, locked rooms, they just and it could just take a singular event to get everything uh, pouring out of us. And so um, I'm not a fear-driven kind of person, but I do pay attention to Mars Uranus squares. And if you're feeling anxious, pay attention to what that's about, like what's coming up for you, and use it as an opportunity to channel some of that anxiety. It could be linked with something unresolved in the past that's getting triggered again. It may have nothing to do with an outer event, only with something that's coming up that you haven't adequately resolved. How do you see this full moon?
Well, I don't think you can hold back what's already in motion, right?
Oh, no, you can't.
Yeah,
You won't be able
and
to.
absolutely. Full moons illuminate. They bring things to a peak. They bring whatever that is already in motion to the full light of day. And that's that moon in Sagittarius, right? So that's going to put that on the increase, whatever that momentum is that is in development, right? So this is about facing a personal truth. It is about getting started on whatever it is that is bridging you to your future. Of course, the full moon is in square to the nodal axis, which means there are thresholds to be crossed as well too. There's a trine here with that full moon with planet, a trine with a full moon, with Chiron and with Mars, all in fire energy. And, Chiron is a destiny archetype here. What is meant to be will be, right? And the Mars initiative here in Leo, that actualizing piece. This is actually a kite formed with the sun here, which is the propeller here. So this is really a suggestion of moving to the next level. That's what I see with this full moon in Sagittarius. This is June 11, and Jupiter has just moved into Cancer and is about to, on the 15th, form the square to planet Saturn. So this is already the already in motion. It is already setting up here to deliver. That's what I think is happening with this transit.
Yeah. The other important aspect is Pluto squaring Venus. Venus rules obviously our relationships and our resources, and Venus rules Uranus in Taurus, and that is squaring Mars. And so there can be some unexpected experiences that you have, surprises in relationships, something just coming through the side door you wouldn't have predicted potentially. But with Pluto squaring Venus, it is an opportunity. We always talk about hard, stressful Saturn aspects being an opportunity to eliminate the things that aren't serving you. So if you're in a relationship where things are out of balance, the giving and receiving is not equal. This transit will not let you live with it or brush it under the carpet anymore. There are things that will be exposing. There'll be choices that need to be made as a result, and extremes that could happen in those cases. It may be too in a work reality if you've stayed in something too long. that you know you've needed to leave, it can be a time when your tolerance is just nil. So it's good to understand what's coming. So if you feel on a body level, a nervous system level, an emotional level, that you know how to support yourself at a time when everything's going to be really loud and big and expanded. And I think incredibly potentially intense.
Well, and I see this with the Mars-Uranus tension, of course. I mean, there's always with Mars Uranus, it's extreme and it's high anxiety and it's tension and it's all of that stretched here. But Mars is disposited by that Sun, which
Mhm.
is the kite position of the full moon itself. And Uranus is in an out of sign trine to planet Pluto. So I think they're both mitigated to a certain extent. You still may feel the whammy of that Mars Uranus influence, like, oh my God, that's it's an extreme. And of course, we always watch the volatility factor with Mars and Uranus. And whenever we have strong Uranus, we also have geophysical things as well too. So we might see
Right.
weather extremes of some kind, with this transit. But certainly there will be the unexpected with the Mars Uranus piece of it. Whatever is unexpected, as I'll say, is already in the works anyway. It's all, it's getting that kind of triggered to do the explosion, whatever it might be. But I'm seeing it as a necessary letting go and a necessary catalyst to getting to the next phase or the next chapter of what is meant to be taken on. Gemini is about trading places, right?
Mm.
It is about moving from that page to this page, moving from
Yeah.
that chapter to this chapter, moving from that book to this book, right? So we're on to next program. And we've got the whole rest of the month of June that I think that this full moon is going to be playing out.
Oh, totally. I want to just say again, well, thank you for mentioning the top of the kite is the sun. It is representing the light forward. And thankfully, you're right, Uranus and Pluto are in a trine out of sign, but they will be trining each other for some time. And so that's a relief to know, given that Uranus rules Pluto in Aquarius, because Uranus wants, in this context, to support the transformation. It's going to deliver something quickly, but it's going to show you how to do it. It's
Hmm.
like move into this lane and you'll miss the traffic or the crash or whatever it might be. The square, I just feel could be potentially, there could be some violence, things that you're watching in the world on television or politically, right? It feels kind of big that way, geophysically for sure too. But sometimes it's just a matter of what you're observing happening in the world and you're feeling it because you live here. So that could be playing out in that way as well.
Well,
Um,
and the other thing, Moon in Sagittarius, the ruler is Jupiter, and Sun in Gemini, the ruler is Mercury. And if you look at them on this full moon, Mercury here at 4 degrees and Jupiter just at zero here, they are in a new formation here, Mercury and Jupiter. So this is bringing in some new dynamic here in the Cancer archetype, which is Jupiter. It's increasing the need to for self-preservation, for protection, for safety, for security, for dealing with, the home base, right?
Yeah, there's sex telling Venus at the same time. So
Hmm.
that is another wonderful supportive aspect within that whole configuration. Venus being you getting what you need
Yeah.
or feeling the support of others in the middle of something. Somebody having your back when you're having a good cry,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. So anyway, that's what the full moon does. It's bringing up emotion in all of us so we can move it.
Hmm.
I love the word you use in this way too, the catalyst. That is a big part of this full moon with Uranus squaring Mars. It will be a catalytic, is that a word? A catalytic full moon, catalyzing your life in some way.
Yeah. getting something off the ground here.
Yeah.
And this is the Saturn-Jupiter square that takes place on the 15th of June. And we have been working under this. We've had all of these cycles within cycles that have been operative. There has been a triple alignment of Saturn Jupiter square. This is extended, as you can see, the previous Saturn Jupiter square dates August 19, December 24, when both planets were retrograde, and the June 15 date. Both August 19 and December 24 took place across Pisces. Saturn was in Pisces, Jupiter was in Gemini. This is, we've been working all our way, all this time since August of last year to get to this threshold crossing with both Saturn and Jupiter in new signs. And so I think that this is getting us to a starting point. Certainly, from August through, it encompassed, the U.S. election and all the things that we have experienced. Saturn and Jupiter are a 20-year cycle. This is the kind of the 5, 6 year mark of a cycle that started in terms of Jupiter pushing against the boundary of Saturn all this time to try to get to baseline here to now get started. Since the first square, we've been pushing against some kind of invisible barrier. We've been dealing with the uncertainties of everything that's been the moving picture thing. Everything's been in motion in this way of nothing really being certain. As we cross over this threshold of zero Aries is the world cardinal axis, right? So this is where there's a lot going on the planet in terms of the political landscapes and so on. By the time we get through this June 15 date, a reality is starting to set into play that is giving more definition to the work that needs to be done. And this is, what I wanted to show a few moments ago when I was mentioning, Jupiter's the faster mover. Jupiter squares Saturn on June 15, and as it's moving forward, it will come and square Neptune. So that's the translation of light. Jupiter moving from the square of Saturn and taking that energy and depositing it on the Neptune in Aries. Neptune in Aries, that's about this is, the spiritual warrior end of things. It's that whole creative content here of inspiration coming out of nowhere. Well, it's not coming out of nowhere, it's coming out of somewhere. It's coming out of that Saturn in Aries. This is about taking the potentials and making them real. I think during this period of time, the potentials are showing themselves in more defined ways. We still have, as we said, as test pilot for the rest of the year. But for right now, something is crystallizing that we can take and use as a bottom line. It's going to be refined. We might make some changes as we go through the rest of this year and get to our starting point at the end of February next year. But right now, something real is defining itself for us to move forward. And it's very interesting when you look at this chart as well too, because it's interesting. Mars is at 29 degrees of Leo, and it's in an angle to Saturn and to Neptune. This is the quincunx 150-degree angle, which is an adjustment angle. Mars at that 29 degrees Leo, is that's how we're actualizing, right? How we're actualizing, how we're creating, and so forth. And the Mars is about that sense about what I deserve, and how I want to create, and what kind of actualization am I going to do. With the quincunx, it's saying here, I've got to analyze differently how I'm going about actualizing that which which I desire. Mars is also forming that quincunx to Pluto. So this is actually a yod formation here with the
Mm.
Mars energy, right? Um, there's another yod taking place with Jupiter and Pluto as well too. It's two yods that are, it's Jupiter, Mars, and Uranus, a yod. Mars, Pluto, and Saturn, Neptune, a yod. These are times of adjusting, major adjustment here. It's really becoming very, very aware of how we can't put square peg in round hole anymore, right? So I think that this is a very productive timetable that will take us to the end of the month in
Great.
terms of
Um,
sorting out things. Hmm.
yeah, it was excellent. Thank you. One of the things too I was noticing with Mars and Leo at that last degree, that energetic degree in the yod, is that Mars and Leo is for all of us. It connects to our creative life purpose,
Hmm.
and people born with a lot of fire come into this world with a special sense of destiny. And so Mars and Leo for all of us, though, can energize that special sense of why we are here. And really also have us all thinking about how do I want to be remembered? And what kind of legacy do I want to leave, perhaps, if that's the word somebody wants to use? How do what is it that I want to experience or share? And so it's a heart-centered energy being in Leo, which is all heart, right? It's very dramatic at times. And so I do feel like the focus with Mars being a desire nature within you, your heart's really got to be all the way in it, right? All the way in it. It can't be just a thought you have. You gotta really want it from an emotional place with Jupiter and Cancer, then really bringing it into that heart energy there. So an adjustment is right. Am I feeling this still? Do I still want this? And is this leading my soul forward? Does this represent my evolution? Yeah.
And it's a work in progress, as you can see the dates that I have on the screen that continue, the process of figuring all of that out. And I just wanted to point out as well too, when we're looking at the motion, Mercury's going to be moving along, and it is going to move into Leo. And I've forgotten the date of that coming up towards the end of the month. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, the 26th of June. And at that time, it will also be aspecting, it'll be a sextile to planet Uranus when it does that. But what is going to happen is that when Mercury moves to Leo, it's going to form an opposition to that Pluto in Aquarius. And that is a trigger.
Mm.
Again, Mercury's activity is one to watch because Mercury is the ruler of the South Node, right? So when that happens, when that opposition happens, which is the 29th of June, it is going to pick up the degree of the Mars-Pluto opposition that happened at the end of April,
Wow. Yeah.
right?
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Indeed.
we're something is in the works, and you may know what that is, or you may be peeling back the layers of it now. But the whole month of June is set up to open it up further, to expose it, to put it front and center, where you have the opportunity to navigate your way through it, to eliminate what it is that is blocking access to uh, the next leg of the journey. Let me put it that way.
Wow. You know what I just discovered? Because we were just focusing on that new moon and full moon, but we're going to have another new moon on June 25th in Cancer for Cancer,
Mm.
conjunct Jupiter. So I'm hoping we're going to be on air before that new moon, but if we're not, the sun and the moon rules Cancer, right? So the sun and the moon are in Cancer, forming a new moon conjunction and conjunct Jupiter at the same time.
Hmm.
That feels auspicious.
Yeah.
That feels enlightening. That feels buoyant.
And
And
just
so,
And just
That's,
before that, on the 24th, that Jupiter conjunction um, is also increasing the quincunx, the yod formations that I talked about a few moments ago. So we have that happening, and then the new moon happens, and just following that, Mercury trines Saturn, and then Mercury trines Neptune, and then we have the Mercury Pluto opposition. So yeah, there's some positive momentum happening there as we finish out the month.
I mean, this is how you get through any peaking energy that you might see coming. I mean, I personally, just the Mars Uranus combination always makes me wonder what's coming. But what I do with that energy is, okay, well, where is this traveling? What's coming following?
Hmm.
Again, I love, love, love how you're talking even about the Saturn Jupiter square and also Jupiter Neptune square, pulling the light forward, the potential of something, but also that Sun, Moon, Jupiter conjunction in Cancer and a Mercury Saturn trine. That is securing something in your life, securing something that you've been working toward, even giving you some kind of emotional foundation or security within yourself that can help you continue on in a way that feels grounded. So that's a great way to wrap up the month.
Absolutely. So, potentials are at their ripest, I think. All righty. So we've come to the end of our time. Are there any closing
Yay.
thoughts there,
There always
Kristin?
is a little quote from Kristin. Okay, I love Jupiter energy anywhere, unless it's exaggerating something we don't want. So let's not let it do it. Let's exaggerate what we want. And I just wanted to share this quote by Michael Sorensen. He says, "Be generous with encouragement. It is verbal sunshine. Be generous with encouragement. It is verbal sunshine. It warms hearts and costs nothing. It enriches lives." So be
Lovely.
generous with encouragement and, oh, it'll come back to you tenfold. I love that Jupiter energy and what it can do when we just put our heart out there in a big way, in a new way, it will come back to us. What do you always say? Take one step toward the gods and they'll take 10 steps towards you.
Yes.
That's Jupiter. All right, my friend, it was lovely being with you today again, as always. And we will be back next month, hopefully before that new moon. But if not, you've got the notes. Until next time, namaste.